Dr. McCann here, and congratulations on if you've lost weight on one of the injections like the semaglutide, the Ozempic, or the Mounjaro. One of the most common questions that I get is what's next? How am I going to keep the weight off now that I've lost it? So in today's video, we're going to go over the top 5 tips to keep the weight off. And these tips are useful for if you've lost the weight with one of the injections. It's also useful for if you've had bypass and lost weight, maybe you've been on a very low calorie diet and lost the weight. Any situation, these tips are gonna apply to help keep the weight off and help have a healthy lifestyle change after you've lost the weight. Tip number 1 is protein, protein, protein. So protein is what builds your muscle, and your muscle is what burns calories. So if you lose your muscle by not taking in enough protein, then you're actually gonna not burn as many calories. So it's very important to get enough protein in your diet to keep your muscle, which will keep or even increase your metabolism so you can take in a few more calories and still keep the weight off. So how much protein do you actually need? Well, generally, you need 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass. There are many scales widely available now that measure your body composition, and this will tell you how much lean body mass that you have. And this is going to be the minimum to keep your muscle. You need to get in a little bit more protein than this if you actually want to increase your muscle. So by keeping or even increasing your muscle mass, you will keep or increase your metabolism, which will be easier to keep the weight off even when you start taking in a few extra calories. Not only does protein help with your metabolism, it also helps control hunger when used as a part of a carb moderation diet, and specifically carb with a low glycemic index, which we'll get to a few tips from now. So make sure you're taking enough protein to keep your muscle. However, not just any protein will do. You want to make sure you take in specifically lean protein, which brings us to tip number 2. So tip number 2 is watch your fat. So yes, I just said that you need to get in a lot of protein to keep your muscle. However, this needs to be lean protein. Unless you're doing ketosis diet, and unless you're in ketosis, you need to watch the amount of fat that you get in your diet. So if you're in ketosis, you can take in as much fat as you want because you're using that to burn energy. If you're not in ketosis and you're just doing carb moderation, that is not the case. If you take in too much fat, you will gain weight. So you need to pick the protein choices that have the least amount of fat. For women, generally, to lose weight, your daily fat intake should be around 35 grams. If you're trying to just maintain, you can bump it up to 40, and if you start to gain weight, you're gonna need to bring it back down. Men, generally 55 to 60 grams of fat a day will help to keep the weight off. And to get your exact measurements, you can see a doctor, nutritionist, dietitian can tell you, measure your body composition and tell you the exact amount of macros that you need. But again, the lean protein is key. So some tips on some protein. There's some protein choices that you might think are good that actually you might gain weight with because they have a lot of fat. So starting out with these choices, the Atkins supplements are going to have a lot of fat in them. They will have a lot of protein, but they'll have a lot of fat. And unless you're in ketosis, you will gain weight with these supplements. Peanut butter, whole eggs, a lot of cheese, and even nuts. All of these foods are gonna have a lot of fat for the protein content. So if you're trying to get in 100 grams of protein a day, you don't need foods that have a 1-to-1 ratio of protein to fat. So all of the foods that I just mentioned have a high fat content for the amount of protein that you're gonna get and the amount of protein that you actually need. Instead, some healthy alternatives that have a lot of protein and not as much fat, you can try beef jerky, which is very low fat with high protein. Fish like salmon is a great option. It's packed full of omega. It has a lot of protein, so fish is a great option. Protein shake supplements, especially with a whey protein, is a great way to get in all your protein while not going over on your fat. And Greek yogurt is like a magic food. It's packed with protein, and you can get fat-free versions, so that is also a great alternative. So this brings us to tip number 3, watch your carbs. So tip number 3 is watch your carbs. So I'm not talking about necessarily ketosis. So a ketosis diet is very healthy, and it's great at helping you lose weight, helping you keep it off, and it does help with medical problems like diabetes, specifically type 2 diabetes. However, it is very hard to adhere to. So if you can't adhere to the ketosis diet, then just try carb moderation or carb restriction, to where you're still keeping an eye on the carbs that you eat, but you're not in ketosis. And this is necessary to help you keep the weight off. And specifically, you want to do the low glycemic carbs. So what am I talking about? What's the glycemic index? The glycemic index is simply a value used to measure how much a specific food raises your blood sugar. So the higher glycemic index that a carb has, the more it will increase your blood sugar, which an hour and a half to 2 hours later will eventually make you hungry. So this is why you might think you're doing great eating a bowl of oatmeal or a bowl of cereal for breakfast, and then just a few hours later you're starving and you're thinking, I just ate breakfast, what's wrong? Some of these can have a very high glycemic index, which initially will raise your blood sugar, causing an increase in insulin, which ultimately makes your blood sugar low. A few hours later, that makes you hungry. So a low glycemic index carb is what you're looking for, and the glycemic index can be found on multiple different websites. And so generally you don't want to take in more carbs than protein during the day. So if you need 100 grams of protein to keep your lean body mass, to keep your muscle, don't take in more than 100 grams of carbs. And so this is a lot easier to adhere to than ketosis, while still being able to keep the weight off. And you will also feel a lot better with this lifestyle. Tip number 4 is watch your sugar intake. And this is very important. So just go ahead and stop all the sugary drinks. If you know it's sugar, just stop. You have to stop all sodas. 1 can of soda a day for a year will make you gain 15 pounds. So just stopping the sodas, which I know it's easy to say and sometimes it's hard to do, will help you to keep the weight off. You're gonna gain the weight right back if you keep drinking Cokes, slushies, sugary drinks, sugary coffee drinks, anything with a lot of sugar, the weight's gonna come back. And it's gonna make you hungry. Anything with a lot of sugar is gonna make you hungry. So in order to help curb your hunger and keep the weight off, you have to stop, especially the sugar drinks, especially sodas. And again, a great alternative is coffee with some skim milk. You're getting your protein, sip on it for a few hours. It will help curb your hunger. So coffee, a skinny latte, those are some great alternatives to help curb your hunger and keep the weight off. Tip number 5 is exercise, and unfortunately there's just no getting around this one. Exercise is important to keep or increase your muscle, and we've already been over the fact that the muscle is what keeps or increases your metabolism, and that's how you're going to keep the weight off when you take in more calories. So exercise is very important, and you don't have to spend an hour at the gym a day for this. If you're just starting out, again, 20 minutes. There's a reason why HIIT classes are so popular. So you can get into that fat burning exercise in less time. So a HIIT class, 20 minutes on your elliptical at home, whatever you have, you don't have to spend all day doing it, but you do need to do it. And that's part of a healthy lifestyle. It will increase your muscle, which will help with your metabolism. If you have physical limitations, you may need to see a specialist to help you know what exercises you can do to build your muscle so you can keep the weight off. So to recap, keep the weight off, lose even more weight, control your hunger, and increase your metabolism by taking in lean protein, avoiding sugary, starchy carbs and sugary drinks, and exercise.